So right now we're live and we are streaming on Facebook and we're also streaming live Twitter and it's the World Youth Skills Day. Hello everyone. We want to welcome you to our World Youth Skills Day event and we hope you are doing okay. My name is Joshua Alade and I'm the moderator for today's event. And if you have any questions, I want you to keep your questions because I have exciting panelists who are going to share from their wealth of experience on how we can build skills for resilience as young people, especially as we strive to build back better after the COVID-19. As you may all know, people would say, would there ever be a post-COVID? I would say we are already in the post-COVID era. And as you can see, borders are opening. Most countries are already giving out like rules on how you can come in. There's been the debate about how if you are going to come into a country, how long are you going to be able to stay in quarantine and all of the procedures needed to ensure that you are safe. And as we talk about all of these things, it's also talking about the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic has really affected a lot of young people. Young people right now are not able to access decent work because people are mindful of how much they are able to give out. And another part of it is the fact that we see that right now schools are on lockdown. According to UNICEF, about 1.6 billion children are not in school right now because of the lockdown. So as we dive in straight into our conversation, we'll be very happy for you to tell us where you are joining us in from and what part of the world you are joining us. If we're in Lagos, and we're in Nigeria that you're joining us in from. And I'm sure that you're going to be having a very, very wonderful time listening to our panelists discuss and share their experience with us all. So starting off, we're going to be having someone from the International Labour Organization, Dino. Dino is in charge of employment at and also trainings, right, at the International Labour Organization. And he's a very good friend of the house. He's going to be giving the an introductory remark just to dive us in straight into the conversation. So I'm going to be inviting Dino right now to lead us on. Hello, Dino.
Good afternoon, Joshua. Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you so much for inviting the ILO to this panel, and thank you so much, first and foremost, for convening it. I think it's a great initiative, and I think it's a very good occasion, the World Youth Skills Day. As you rightly said, I think it's a great opportunity to highlight some of the pertinent issues that we are trying to discuss here today. And I think a day like this gives us the opportunity to come together and reflect a bit on where we stand, but more importantly, how can we proceed? What can we do in order to address the current situation, and how can we make sure that we come out of this crisis that we are finding ourselves in? As you said, my name is Dino Corell. I work at the International Labour Organization here in Abuja, together with my colleague Ekpemi, who's also online and who will speak a bit later. And I'm working on employment and migration issues primarily. And since I'm here, having always had a great relation and collaboration with the Youth SDGs Network, I think you guys are doing a lot of very good, relevant, and interesting work. And I think it's great to see that you're convening us again today here to give us the opportunity to exchange some views. I don't want to speak for too long, but maybe just to set the stage a little bit, because, of course, we're talking about the crisis that we are in right now, which is, of course, a big, big, big challenge for all of us. But having said that, young people, even at the best of times, are disproportionately affected by labor market deficits. I think this is something we need to keep in mind. Even before the crisis, they were 3 times more likely to be unemployed than older folks. And before the crisis, some 267 million young people were not in employment, education, or training, the so-called needs. which is one of the indicators of the SDG framework, actually. And it's an interesting indicator because it gives you an interesting snapshot of the potential of young people that might be lost in a given situation, because they're neither in education, but they're also not contributing to the labor market. And the interesting thing here is that it also captures those who might not even be looking for work. And then in addition to that, young people also very often work in hard-hit sectors, which also aggravates the situation brought about by the crisis. Some 126 million young people all around the world remain in poverty, even though they are working, which is another big challenge, right? It means that somebody might be working, but he doesn't earn enough to lift him, herself, or their families out of poverty, which is a big challenge. And then let me also just briefly mention informal employment. A lot of young people are actually in informal employment. According to ILO figures, I think it's up to 90% of young people in Africa work in informal employment, which is, of course, problematic, and because it is associated with less sort of labor market job quality, less coverage by social protection, less coverage by labor rights. And of course, here in Nigeria, we all know young people and employment situation of young people is a challenge as well before the COVID-19 crisis, and is definitely something that needs to be addressed, in particular now in view of the situation that we are in. And there's a danger now that this impact of the crisis is not just felt right now, but that it will basically be felt throughout the working lives. A similar dynamic occurred during the financial crisis, where certain deficits during the crisis were not just going away once the crisis were over. And there was some publication recently that mentioned or referred to a so-called lockdown generation, which means that young people who are either joining the labor market at this moment or who have joined the labor market recently might be affected by this situation for a long time. So I think this is really something we need to keep in mind and look out for, that this is something that has to be addressed as a matter of priority. Let me just say one more figure, and then I'll leave it at that for now. The ILO has been conducting a global survey recently, together with some partner organizations. And according to that survey, 1 in 6 young people who participated in that survey globally were saying that they had stopped working since the onset of the crisis. And of course, that's not a representative survey. It's a global survey where people participated from all over the world in very different situations, of course, but I think it gives us an indication of the magnitude of the crisis that we are facing. It's really something that is affecting a lot of people, a lot of young people in particular. And very lastly, the impact on education is, of course, very severe. I already mentioned those who are joining the labor market just right now to an economy that is in a very challenging shape, but then also what happens to education institutions, what happens to workplace training, what happens to all the education institutions that are closed. Of course, there are certain ways to address that, but you need infrastructure, you need capacity, you need resources to make that happen. The fact that we are meeting here today in an online panel, I think, shows that there are ways to connect even during these times. And it's probably one of the pointers that should show us what needs to be done in order to continue with getting together, bringing different people together, but also what might be some of the options and solutions in the area of education. I think I'll leave it at that as my introductory remarks, but I will be with you and happy to discuss more specific questions and also answer questions in the Q&A later on. Thank you so much, and thank you again for having us and for convening this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dino, for the awesome opening remarks. And something that I'm really taking away from your the opening remark is the fact that you a lot about education and how much that we are leaving our young people behind because they are not in school presently, and the fact that if we do not address this seriously, we risk the potential of becoming the lockdown generation. And if we can meet online to have this kind of conversation, it means that if our government and people who are in the position of power make it a priority to ensure that every person goes to school, and whether there's a COVID or not, that learning never stops, it's going to happen. But because it's not happening right now, and that's why we're having this conversation to really ask our young people that and share with them on how they can actually build skills that can make them resilient at this time. And something we need to put in perspective is the fact that higher institutions in Nigeria also are currently closed. And this does not mean that in other parts of the world they are going to wait for us. Education is happening in other parts of the world. They are being connected by technology. So if young people in Nigeria, if we do not look out for how we can use online learning methods to get ahead at this time, we might be risking more than a year of learning. Because one of the things you have to look at, it's not really a gap year. You are missing a lot of learning if you do not tap into the online method of learning and of development. So I'm excited to about this conversation we are going to be having. We have three awesome ladies who are going to be sharing from their wealth of experience. And to dive in straight into the conversation, I'm going to be inviting first I'll be inviting Rita to really share to tell us about herself. Rita, you are a social entrepreneur. I want you to tell us what social entrepreneurship really is and about the work that you do at EcoBata.
Hi, thank you, Joshua. Thank you for having me. Okay, so my name is Rita, and I'm the founder of EcoBata. So EcoBata is a social enterprise. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, please go on.
Okay, so EcoBata is a
Yes.
social enterprise where we work to reduce, reuse, and recover waste. So the whole idea is that we want to institute a culture of responsible consumption in every. We started with Nigerian, but now we're thinking every African household, right? So we started in 2018, and so far so good. We've been able to grow to from say just my house to 4 communities here in Abuja, Nigeria. So the thing about social entrepreneurship, right, is that it's the same way you do a regular business, but right now with a social message. So the making profit is not the core of the work that you do, but rather it's making impact. So like the way a regular business person will talk about say profit as the bottom line, profit, profit, profit. For a social entrepreneur and a social enterprise, you think more of the impact. So the number of people you're impacting, for us, the number of waste that we are diverting from the environment, and then as a result, the number of CO2 that we are saving from being emitted into the atmosphere, the number of women in certain communities that we are empowering with waste to wealth skills, the number of young people that ordinarily work in the informal waste sector that we are trying to make their job say sustainable and provide some form of social inclusion for them. So those are like the numbers that make that those are the numbers that we track at every time, at every point. But also as a social enterprise, profit is part of our the metrics that we measure, because you cannot be sustainable if you're not financially sustainable. You can't do impact without finance. So but the major difference is profit is not the first thing, impact is the first thing. So that's what we do at EcoBata, and what the social enterprise basically is about. So a social enterprise can be for profit or not for profit, but mostly even when you're not for profit, the regular non-government organizations that you see, it is important that you have say how you fund your operations, because you literally need finance to do impact. So that's it for us at EcoBata. So we collect waste from households and commercial entities in and around Abuja, Nigeria. And then the waste that we collect, we sort into different waste streams, your plastic bottles, your paper, your cartons, and all. And while we outsource a couple of them to other larger recycling companies to turn into new products, we currently have a scheme where we work with local community women and then turn this some of these waste materials, especially plastic bags. So they and weave them using, the traditional weaving loom, the way you make a regular ashoke that you wear, and then they transform them into new products that they now sell online. So that's it for us at EcoBata, and that's what we do right now. Thank you, Joshua.
All right, thank you so much, Rita, and you do an amazing work at Ecobata. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to be going to Yewande. Yewande, you are a human resource professional, and I would want you to tell us more about, introduce yourself, tell us about what you do, especially with your organization, Career Life Nigeria.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Yoandi Jimodo, as mentioned. Um, so my full-time job, I'm an HR professional. I work as an HR lead now with Energy 360 Africa, but I'm also the founder of Career Life Nigeria. And so what is Career Life Nigeria? It's a social initiative aimed at helping young professionals achieve measurable career growth. And so how it started was as a young graduate, I studied chemical engineering, and it was very difficult for me to actually get a job. And going through unemployment and the mental issue. So I decided to deliberately switch from chemical engineering to human resources so that I can be at the other end of the table and see how I can help people.
Yewande. Oh
Network.
wow, she's having issues with her internet connectivity.
Working as a sorry, did you lose me at a point?
Yes, you started talking about your
Can you hear
profession,
me?
Career Life Nigeria.
Okay,
So
wow.
you stopped at working as a
Oh,
human
Nigerian
resource
network. I just even switched network.
professional.
Oh. Anyway, okay, working as a human resource professional, I can see I've been at the candidate level, and now I'm at the interviewer level now. And so I've worked as a recruiter for a while and seen what young graduates go through. I see them having interview phobia. This I know this sometimes I actually know these people personally. I know these people are good, but they come in front of me and they're just saying something else. So what the employability fitness program actually does is to take away the walls, that interview walls that make you very tense, and bring you to a no judgment zone. So we actually started last year. The vision is biannual, and we help young professionals or young graduates come, and they have live interview mock sessions with these same professionals. They would probably meet on a day and be shaky. And these people come into a no judgment zone with the aim to actually coach you. But generally, Career Life has all other initiatives that actually help to equip the young graduates and generally help them make them more employable and to also build skills that they can actually use to make money for themselves.
Thank you so much, Yewande. There's a question that just popped up as you were talking. So later on during the conversation, I would ask you. Next is Epeme. Epeme, can you please introduce yourself and tell us what you do at the International Labour Organization?
Hi, everyone. First, I just want to say thank you for having me at such a topical discussion on the World Youth Skills Day. My name is Ekpemi Ekabafe. I'm a project officer of the International Labour Organization, but I'm actually a trained lawyer. And I consider myself these days a development professional because you have to apply just sort of something similar to what we're discussing today. You have to learn, unlearn, and relearn skills that would be necessary to apply in your day job. And so basically, I support the vision of the ILO in promoting social justice and decent work for all and ensuring no one is left behind. I'm honored to be a part of an organization that promotes such impactful vision, and at country level would try and implement projects that would drive the benefits to the common Nigerian and other member states, of course. So this is a summary of what I do, and yeah, and it's interesting, and I'm happy to be here.
Right, thank you, Epeme. Now we're going to dive in back into the conversation, and I hope that everyone who's listening, there's something you would have noticed about everybody here. Yewande actually studied biochemistry, but she's into human resource right now. She's a recruiter.
No, chemical
Ekpeme
engineering.
is a lawyer, studied law, but right now she works as a project officer with the International Labour Organization. And Rita's journey is actually amazing. I don't know what to say about your own journey, but it's something that is pointing out that if you want to really make it in today's world of work, you need to be resilient and you need to have skills that are need based at this particular point in time. You need to be adaptable. So I'm going to be asking Yewande at this particular point in time, as a recruiter, as a human resource professional, what skills, when you go out recruiting, when you are looking out for the next hire, what skills do you think that young people need to have now to get a job and to also ensure that they stay employed?
Okay. So when we're looking at recruitment generally, what I'm looking out for depends on various things, right? So for the purpose of this discussion, I would look at entry level and mid level because as an HR professional, the kind of things I'm looking out for in an entry level professional, which is 0 to 3 thereabouts, will be different from somebody who is in the mid level of their career, which is from about 5 and above. So, but one thing, let me start with the entry level professional. Um, as a young graduate, I'm not expecting you to have, all the donkey years of experience that I would expect from someone who has experience. But first thing, basic technical skills. So maybe as a doctor, as an engineer, as an accountant, the first thing I would look out for is the technical skills. You have the potential. Do you even have the basic knowledge of what you're applying for? So if I'm looking for an accounting role, it's not for me to say. There would be like an accounting professional or somebody who is a subject matter expert. Even if you have all the wonderful skills in the world and you don't even show the potential to be able to easily learn this thing, it may be a big no-no. So for those who actually crammed in school and did not actually understand what the lecturer was saying, sometimes they may come back at you and then, it may not be funny. Then another thing, because what organizations are looking out for differ. So if I don't want to say something that may not be key to another one, but what I would say from experience is something that goes across all board. For soft skills now, basic soft skills, communication. We take this thing for granted so much that it hits us back later and then it becomes a big issue for us. Communication, both written and verbal. I've once interviewed a graduate who studied English, like English, and I asked her to write an application letter, and it was terrible. Even me that studied chemical engineering, I can do better than that. And then most people are used to speaking broken or writing in shorthand, and then they are writing you for me instead of you. And they're so used to it that it becomes a problem for you to actually fit into the professional employment space because you've not let go of that thing that has been bothering you. So I think if you want to come into the job space, it's something, your communication skills is something you need to perfect up to a level that it won't be an issue. Then another thing, which I know is uniform across all level, is attitude, right? People feel that, oh, attitude was the big deal, but the truth is, during an interview, it can be very obvious that you have attitude issues. So let me give another example because I've sat down in, I would say, hundreds or thousands of interviews. I have so many interview experiences that I don't think I can finish. I was interviewing an intern, 400 level intern from a private university. You can see that this guy, for a 400 level student, has done so much, right? Has interned in even outside Nigeria, and is an AI person. But this guy, I don't even know who can even employ him. I don't know if he can be employable in Nigeria because he had this kind of aura, like, who are all of you? I can literally buy this building and all of that. And so there was a question I was thrown at him, like, oh, you've had so many internship experience in 400 level, like, how are you able to do it? And his response was like, if you had gone through my CV very well, you would know, like, this is where my school finishes and closes. Like, more, what kind of stupid question are you asking me? And that's where the interview ended because the guy had a terrible, he was so full of himself. And then the third thing I would say is ability to work with people. because people are always saying, yeah, machines are coming to take over. But the truth is, you're still going to work with flesh. You're still going to work with people. There's no way you can let go. You can succeed without good people management skills. At the beginning, maybe you might get away with it. People will say, oh, he or she is technically sound, so let's just forget it. But you can't rise to leadership, or you can't even stay employable if you cannot work well in a team. One thing most employers do these days is assessment center, group interviews. I know the first job I had, we did a group interview. And so they want to see how well you can work with people. Are you the kind of person that just shoot down your opinion on other people? How well can you have like team spirit and all of that? Those are the things that actually get tested. Some people sit down behind, see how well you relate with these people, and they judge you based on that because they know that team spirit, teamwork is actually very key. So let me just stop at that for entry level for those three skills. Then mid level, again, it differs per room. Mid-level, one key point I would say, because it's somewhat similar to entry level. Quality of experience differs from quantity of experience. When I say this, it's not something that I probably read online, it's something that I've actually seen in real life. You see someone with 6 years experience, and this person is just quantity. This person has not been exposed to the level of somebody who has even worked 2 years, because probably, most people are just after money these days. So far they are paying me my salary, I don't really care. But then by the time they get to 7 years experience, they find out that they cannot be employable. It's difficult for them to move to another organization because they've not focused on building the kind of skills and actually being intentional about their growth. So let me just give a random example. I would use accounting because maybe it's different from my profession. Um, for somebody who has worked in like KPMG and PwC and co, 2 years, I say 2 years or 1 year in consulting is similar to like 5 years in mainstream because they get exposed a lot. I see somebody who has worked in a cyber cafe managed to maybe their turnover is just maybe 5 million, and this person has 7 years experience, and you say, okay, I want to now start collecting the kind of money that somebody who has experienced so many things. But if that kind of person has been intentional about this is where I want to go to in 7 years, these are the kind of skills I want to have, these are the kind of experience that would help me step up to the next level. It won't be too late at that 7 years experience. And then you now realize that I really don't know as much as people out there. So self-awareness is very key, especially if you want to stay employable and you don't just want to become a local champion that will continue earning that same salary. And also you see people, they're on that same salary band for 7 years and they really need to go and start at the beginning. So let me just stop at that.
Thank you so much, Ewande. Like really very expository statements there from you. And for me, I would say that everything you have said is really true. Attitude, how resilient are you when it comes to your job? How adaptable are you? Like all of these things are what employers look at. And I hope that the people who are young people who are listening right now are taking down notes, because all of these things are really, really very important for your next interview, for that job that you've always wanted. You may have a powerful CV, but when you try to communicate, how well do people see your communication? Do they think that you'll be a very good person that would add value to the team? Really, really very important. So I'm going now taking the conversation from those who are looking for employment to actually somebody who creates employment. Rita, as a social entrepreneur, I don't know if you've seen the 2020 World Youth report by the United Nations Department for Economic and Social Affairs. And in the World Youth report, there was a lot of emphasis on social entrepreneurship as a very good medium to really build back better after COVID-19. And the fact that young people are encouraged to move beyond just having NGOs to become social entrepreneurs. As a social entrepreneur within Nigeria, I want you to share your views about the potential of social entrepreneurship, and then I also want you to share your experience as a social entrepreneur in Nigeria, particularly being a lady. How has it been? Has it been challenging? Has it been rewarding? Has it been exciting?
All right, thank you. So it's been everything that you said: challenging, rewarding, exciting, right? But I want to say that Nigeria and Africa at large, being the way we have, with a whole lot of developmental challenges, from poverty to hunger to education to employment, right? So there are a whole lot of challenges, and that means that there is a very wide space for social entrepreneurs to come in, because again, with challenges come a need for innovation and inventions to solve problems and make life better for people. So that's, I definitely agree with the report that says that we need way more social entrepreneurs, and young people going into entrepreneurship need to be encouraged to actually take on social entrepreneurship, right? As opposed to either going for NGOs or going for strictly for profit businesses, because we have a lot of issues to solve. We have, children out of school, currently out of school. We have environmental challenges, we have health challenges. So, and we need innovations in this space to solve this problem, and also, for people to make profit and create jobs. But the stunning thing for me is, from Yewande's conversation, virtually everything she mentioned about, what the skills that you need to get a good job, or the, skills that you need to get a job, right? As skills that you actually need to run a social enterprise, particularly in Nigeria, because I work in Nigeria. From, being able to communicate properly, written and verbal communications, they're important. You have to be able to tell your story. So you have to be able to tell your story, you have to be resilient, and you need a very good attitude to work with people, because that's what social entrepreneurship is about. So the thing about, social entrepreneurship is you're working towards a particular impact. So for us, we want to mainstream recycling in Nigeria. We're working towards a world without waste. The truth is, we as EcoBatter cannot solve that problem. So in social entrepreneurship, the absence of EcoBatter is not the reason why the problem is. So we need like 1,000,001 EcoBatters, both the small scale businesses and then the large scale businesses, to work together. So when you know that as a social entrepreneur, right, you're definitely humble and open to collaboration, because when you have this, then you can get to the impact that you want to see. You can get to that faster. Another thing about, social entrepreneurship is that right now you need to be able to leverage technology to do a whole lot of things. So technology makes more or less levels the playing field. So technology in delivering your service or your product. So for health, for example, you need to be able to leverage technology to deliver services. While I understand that, Nigeria and again Africa have like a basic infrastructure deficiency, right? But again, technology in delivering service, in documenting your processes, helps. It reduces. It makes the work easier for you. So I'm going to share like a personal story. We before this year, before 2020, we were recording our finances. We were doing regular paperwork, and it was tough. And because we were doing paperwork, so we've lost a couple of funding and support, because we couldn't present an elaborate document that tells the story of where we're coming from in terms of the number of the volumes of waste that we've recovered, and the revenue that we've generated. But since we moved our accounting system to actually a very free platform, so now we can just easily download the CSV file and just send to whoever needs it. So those type of things. Then for us again, we had this issue of people requesting for pickups, and they had to call and wait, say, a month sometimes. But right now you can simply just order by using our platform. So like fill a Google form, and we get that, and we are able to categorize everybody based on where they're coming from. So these little things and these little ways of leveraging technology in graphics and telling your story. So we use Canva rather than using the typical Corel Draw, all of those very long process. So it's just really important to know how to leverage technology, know how to tell your story, be open to collaboration, and have a very good attitude. So from my story, right? So I've been able to do this. I tell you every time that if I can tell, like I have a long list of skills I had to learn in driving my social enterprise. When I started, it was just me. So now in and out, we work with about 20 other young people every month. So we had to learn a lot of skills. I personally had to learn a lot of skills. I studied geology. I'm sure you didn't know I studied geology. And I knew nothing about accounting or finance. I knew nothing about graphics design. I knew nothing about storytelling. All through, school, I didn't even like storytelling. I didn't like telling long stories and all. But, I had to learn those skills to be able to drive the mission, to be able to get support for the enterprise and all. So far, and then as a lady in the sector, so I feel compared to regular entrepreneurship or compared to looking for a job, social entrepreneurship is actually fairer to ladies, because there is this. It's a mission driven sector, right? So For a lady, it's easier for me to be soft and communicate the impact that I want to see. Communicate, tell local communities, talk to women, talk to even men in certain local communities, and just explain what the problem is. And one thing I do is I always link the problem of environmental degradation in Nigeria to how it mostly affects women and girls, because come on, we are the ones that stay at home. We are the ones that have to clean the house and then do not have access to where to dump this waste except for dumping them on the street. When a child gets malaria from mosquitoes due to indiscriminate waste disposal and all, it is the mother that is most affected. It is the mother that has to drop everything to attend to the child. So when I'm telling the story, I am able to relate all of this and just explain it. So I feel, being a lady again that has first-hand experience in these things, it is easier for me to tell the story. And social entrepreneurship is mostly about being able to tell the story and being able to think long term, because again, impact is not something that you make in 1 or 2 years. You have to be looking at 10-15 years. So far it's been fun, it's really been challenging, but then again, the small wins keep us going. So that's it for me.
Thank you so
Did
much,
you hear
Rita.
me?
Yes, I did. Like, I really did. And thank you so much for really answering the questions so well. And I hope that everybody who is watching and listening to this conversation is taking away from it, especially the fact that talking about you being a social entrepreneur and all of the skills that you've had to um to acquire to be able to be successful in this field is really inspiring. And I see your work and what you do, and I want to say kudos to you and continue the good job that you are doing. Now we're going to be moving on to Epeme, and this the reason, and I like this part. Maybe your question should have come in first, because right now we're also talking about the realities of the COVID-19 pandemic. Whether you are a developing country or you are a developed country, every one of us right now we are in the same boat, and it has adversely affected everybody. And what I really want you to do is that I want you to share your own perspective on the challenge that the world especially and young people currently face in respect to having access to jobs, and also around entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Joshua. In sharing my perspective, I would like to share the perspective of the International Labour Organization. Just like you rightly mentioned, the corona pandemic has actually impacted on learning and training opportunities for young persons, which also directly impacts on their ability to learn skills, to reskill and to upskill. And this has, of course, direct impact on their employability. Like Dino had mentioned, there was a survey conducted by the International Labour Organization and the World Bank and UNESCO, and it shows that at least in addition to 1 in 6 persons haven't stopped, when 6 youths haven't stopped working, 9 out of 10 of those the respondents to the survey reported that they had actually experienced closure in their training in their training institutions. This includes technical and vocational education training centers, work-based training centers, apprenticeships and internships as well. So these, of course, I think it was Rita who made reference to this, and also Dino earlier, the disproportionate effect that this has on Africa. When you just think about the fact that we have the youngest youth population in the world, and also taking into consideration the unemployment rates we have, it's natural to assume or to come to the conclusion that African youths are most definitely disproportionately affected by closures of schools, closures of training centers, and the incidental changes that are being made to curb the spread of coronavirus, and like, for example, the lockdown situation and the massive migration to online platforms. But what I would say is, I know Rita said that technology provides a level playing field for all, but just to also stress the fact that although with the technology and virtual learning platform might appear to be a global solution, we have to take into consideration the peculiarities of our region. Because when you talk about moving to virtual platforms, first you have to even think if you're moving a training to a virtual platform, or if you're moving a skills acquisition activity to a virtual platform, do we have are the teachers properly equipped to make that transition from traditional learning to online platform, to online teaching? Do learners have access to internet services or even ICT equipment? Do we have the infrastructure to be able to seamlessly learn, for example, power? How are young Africans able to manage that kind of transition? There's also, of course, the issue of competing economic interest. Just speaking broadly, the average cost of unlimited data is maybe 20,000 naira in Nigeria. And how much is the minimum wage in Nigeria? So you have and that's 30,000 naira, and then you have do you buy internet, or do you eat, so to speak? So it's not really as clear cut, unfortunately, as that. Although we would love for technology to be able to provide that succor, but there is a need for for education systems in Africa to take into consideration the challenges of the average African, and also to bridge the gap of education and skills inequality. If we also take into consideration the issue raised about women having decent representation at in social entrepreneurship, we also know that when it comes to employment, whether it's in work or if it's in skills acquisition or if it's even in learning, that women are disproportionately affected, and there's education inequality in that regard. When we take it, and unfortunately, virtual learning platform does not ease this gap as much as we would like, if conscious steps are not taken. For example, the ILO has conducted a survey on domestic work and the impact of the COVID-19, the gendered impact of COVID-19, and we know that women are more involved in domestic work than the male counterparts. What this means that though we might have virtual training sessions for all, so to speak, but women might not necessarily be able to afford the time to engage in those training platforms just by virtue of social norms that plays in our daily society. So that would just be my initial comments on this. And there's no argument or just that that COVID-19 has impacted on us on skills severely, especially in Africa, and to build from this, obviously the response would need to take into consideration the peculiar challenges of the African continent, and also how do we make up for lost times? I think you mentioned that earlier. And how do we make up for the disruptions to examinations, delayed completion of programs, and how would this impact in long term in terms of creating employment for young people? And yeah, so I'll stop there for now and just see how the conversation goes. And I'll be happy to respond to any other questions.
Thank you so much, Ekpeme. And like very good submissions you've made. Like a lot of questions that we have to ask, both from private individuals, to the government, to all of our higher institutions, is that how can we make effective use of this opportunity even within this crisis that we are in. And to lead us more into the conversation, I'm going to be drawing Dino into to just share, like, for government and for multilateral organization working with the ILO, what do you think that our government can do? What advice, suggestion would you give, and especially as we aim to build back better, what should we be concentrating on right now when it comes to decent work for young people?
Thank you so much, and thanks for the great question, and thank you, Penny, for already preparing the ground. I think these were some pertinent points, definitely. Maybe taking a small step back, just to reiterate again how sort of we see that young people are currently affected by the crisis. I think there are three main points to be made. One is a disruption to education and training. I think we've discussed that, and that of course can also lead to future challenges, as I mentioned at the very get-go. And then if we look at the way that the jobs are being lost at the moment, businesses are collapsing, also startups, which also has impact on that ecosystem. Also, of course, affects directly young workers, young job seekers. Very often, as we know, the ones who are last in are also the first ones out, right? Like if jobs have to be cut, then it usually affects those most who joined most recently. And then thirdly, the challenge of finding job. I referred to the labor market entrance before. What happens to those who are completing their education at the moment, but also to those who are already out there looking for work, which is much, much more challenging. So I think these are the 3 points that we are looking at the moment. And then in terms of policy, because you asked sort of like what can be done, let me refer to something the ILO has been putting together like since the onset of the crisis, basically outlining 4 key pillars where investments can be made. One is, of course, stimulating the economy, which means to make sure that there's enough economic activity out there. And this is, I think, a point that is always very important when we talk about skills development. Very often we focus mostly or mainly on the element of skills development, which is super crucial, but it tackles sort of the supply side. At the same time, if you're very well skilled and there are no jobs out there, it's very difficult to find decent jobs, right? Of course, you can create your own job, but that is very, very difficult. Not everybody is an entrepreneur. And also you need an enabling environment to make that happen. So I think it's very important to keep the demand side in mind. Like we need to make sure that there is actually economic activity so that jobs can be created. And then supporting enterprises and incomes. I think that's a crucial part of the response to COVID-19, both in terms of an emergency response, but also if you think about the longer term socioeconomic impact. What can be done to keep enterprises in business? What can be done to keep workers in jobs? And I think the governments, but also workers, employers, organizations, civil society, other stakeholders can have a role to play in that. And then sort of protecting workers where they are, basically making sure that their workplaces are safe. And then also making sure that there is dialogue between workers, employers, and governments around those questions. But of course, in particular with regards to training and education, I think we have a lot of big tasks ahead of us. And as Pemi said, like a lot of institutions are currently closed. A lot of them are moving online, but it is I fully agree. You cannot do that anywhere in the same way, right? There are certain requirements you need to make that happen. And it's sometimes not so easy to get a infrastructure in place where all of that is possible. So I think it's important also to think about content generation, but then the digital infrastructure is key. And then broadly digital skills as well, how to make sure that both teachers, but also young people have actually skills to know how to use digital learning platforms, digital education platforms, We conducted some consultations recently here in Nigeria with quite a number of younger people, and I think Rita was part of that. And I think it was interesting that it was actually around digital skills, and that was sort of slightly before the COVID pandemic started. And it came out very clearly that there should be more information on how to access actually available platforms and resources that are already out there. So I think a lot needs to be done to make sure that people actually know what can be done. There are learning opportunities out there. So that's one thing, the awareness, but then secondly, the access. How do you get there? And I fully agree, it's not so easy these days to make that happen. And even like in our short discussion here, I was disconnected for some while. I think Rita, if I'm not mistaken, was disconnected. So it's not like that we can just say, we just move everything online and that's it. I think we really need to make sure that we have a comprehensive approach to this, but definitely it will be part of the solution. One more point, if I may. It has been mentioned before. COVID-19 is sort of coming on top of a labor market that is already transforming very, very rapidly, right? This is a challenge that that was with us even before COVID-19. Jobs are changing, the labor market is changing, skill requirements are changing very, very quickly. So many jobs that are out there today, you couldn't even learn anywhere in any institution when I was at school. And the same thing will probably happen over the coming years. So one of the key things we should think about is how to anticipate skill needs in the future, right? How can we make sure that we actually educate young people with skills that will be required once they finish school? How can we make sure that education and training is relevant, both to the labor market of today, but also the labor market of tomorrow? How can we think about those things and bring together the private sector, education providers, and government to make sure that they speak the same language, that they know what employers actually want? And the last point I'm making here is it's sometimes striking, right, that there are so many people out there who are looking for a job. And then you hear employers who are saying they're looking for talent, but they cannot find it. And you wonder, how can it be? How can it be that both these things happen at the same time? What usually is being referred to as the so-called skills mismatch. So what can we do to make sure that we speak together, that we know what is needed, that we know what the labor market needs in order to hire young people, and that young people are in a position to take decisions for their careers that will actually help them find a decent job once they're leaving education. And education is not something that stops with leaving school these days. It's something that will be with us over the life cycle. We have to reskill, as Ekpeni said earlier. It's not something that we leave the university or the TVET institution and then that's it. We need to constantly make sure that our skills are actually updated. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dino, for those very important points. And there's a lot that we will keep talking about when it comes to ensuring that we address this the skills mismatch. And I'm following your submissions. I'll be going over to Yewande and asking, as a human resource professional, in acquiring skills for yourself as an individual, what do you look out for? How do you build your own skills? Can you share stories and then maybe share a story about how one skill that you thought you might not need, that something that a skill you stumbled upon, you were able to use it to actually solve a problem in your work?
Okay, thanks for that. So funny enough, Dino just mentioned something that is very, very key that we currently face, and it's bigger than even talking about it. Something actually faced, and that's what I'm trying to do with Career Life Nigeria, because I see it every day. I experience it every day. So it goes beyond meeting and all of that. About preparing yourself for having to align yourself with the right skill. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, but you're skipping.
Okay. So, okay, let me go back. Should I just start again?
Yes,
It
please.
looks as if I've been disconnected, but let me just continue. Okay. In terms of building the skills that are actually needed, one thing I would say is self-awareness. And you asked me to share a real life story, which I would. If you're not aware, or you're not equipped, or you're not even mentally prepared for what you are going to, it won't help you to actually achieve it. So, for example, you want to travel from Lagos to Ibadan. Knowing your destination would help you plan the route you want to go through, right? So it's similar to the labor market. When you are going into the labor market and to getting the right skills, most people are just desperate. I won't really blame them because they are tired of staying at home, and they
Hello,
get
Yewande.
a job. You need to plan where you're going to be aware of what's actually needed as disrupted a whole lot of things. Organizations that didn't even think they could work from home are now even forced to still work from home and not even resume. And so maybe the kind of skills that you thought, and a lot of roles that never. Hello? Oh, my network.
Please go on. Go on.
Hello?
Please go on.
Hello?
Yewande, go on.
Okay. Okay, let me continue. So, like I was saying, a real life example, while I was working in my last place, I was working as a talent acquisition specialist, and I knew I wanted to transition into the generalist role, that's HR business partnership role. And so what I started doing was to start highlighting some of the skills I needed. It's not like I'd worked in a generalist role before, but I now moved to specialist and I wanted to go back to generalist, right? So I needed to highlight the skills that I used then may not be as relevant moving forward. So one thing I highlighted was data analysis. It might seem like, oh, it's not the role of an HR professional, but moving forward, if you're going to be managing a lot of workforce, you need to be able to analyze data. So I happened to recruit for a role, for an operations manager role, and where I was working, it was a heavily data-driven organization. Like no decisions are made without analyzing data. And so I was in an environment that was data conscious, and I had lots of, would I say, data analysts around me. I just knew that I needed to learn this skill so that I would equip myself for where I was going to. So this role, I was recruiting, like I said, an operations manager role. There was a case study that was heavily dependent on Excel, and I realized I needed to wait 1 to 2 weeks for the director to review it, and it was slowing up my timeline. So what did I do? I knew I needed to learn that case study myself and say, okay, learn it to an extent where I really don't need this person anymore. So I had to, contact a colleague. I needed to resume like an hour earlier so that he can teach me. And that was Excel. And I knew Excel. Oh, there's Excel that you think and there's that really difficult Excel that, some all other top people knew. So I now had to say that this Excel that I felt like a star, like I knew Excel, but with the kind of people I was working with, I didn't even know anything. And so I learned that complex or data analysis for about a week or two. And I started reviewing that case study myself, so much that the operations director then was like the grandfather of Excel, like literally everything. So I got to the point where I could help him, assist him with the job. So what I'm trying to say is that skill that I learned then, actually came in very handy for me. Like because I was aware that moving forward, people are moving to they're heavily depending on data, and your ability to analyze data is very key regardless of the role you are. So you can't say I'm an HR professional, I don't need to know how to do complex data analysis. And so acquiring that skill actually helped him because I went for an interview, and and I'm even interviewing people. I'm able to ask people Excel questions, and I'm able to understand if they know what they are saying or not. Or I'm able to even open a laptop and say, do this, do that, because I can now do it myself. So one thing is, and I've seen a lot of people make that mistake. They are just working, they are just floating on the wind. They just want a job. They just want to have a means of livelihood. They are not really thinking about the future. They are not really aware. And having mentors would also help you. And also, having people to actually guide you and help you. And so, reading online, being in groups that would, when you hear other HR professionals talking, or people in your field, that, oh, I'm very foul. You might feel like a local champion where you are, and you think, oh, I know it all. I was the employee of the month. And then you go outside and you realize, I don't even know anything, So that kind of helps you to upskill and to ensure that your skills are actually relevant, because a lot of people are outdated. And with the way this new work environment is going, people are talking about the future of work. The future of work is already here. It's no longer looking like something that is 2035. It's this corona has brought it closer to. It actually helps you to actually be more informed if you're actually with a good network and you do a thorough analysis of what you need and where you are going to. So let me just stop at that. Mentorship, self-awareness, and actually going after what actually counts.
All right, thank you so much, Yewande.
Tell me you
Those are
heard me
really
and my
very
network
important.
wasn't off.
No, we heard you very well, really clear. Thank you, Yewande. Ekweme, right now,
Okay.
what skills do you feel is needed right now? And can you share a story about a skill that maybe you were able to pick up along the way, and then it's
Why
really
did
helpful for your work right now?
Okay. Um, like I mentioned earlier, I'm a lawyer by training, and I don't know if we have any other lawyers here, but I do not necessarily. I've come to the conclusion that both your LLB and your BL does not necessarily equip you with any practical skills that you need in your day-to-day life. Fair enough. You're going to learn a lot about interpreting contracts and business law and the other aspects of it. But for in to be able to be globally competitive, I definitely needed to learn more soft skills as well as different hard skills. Just like Yewande mentioned, I had to learn Excel. I had to learn language skills. I had to learn other skills related to project management and execution. These are not things that I learned in a university or even from my bachelor's to master's degree, even at PhD level. Nobody comes and tells you how to practically implement these things. And so knowing that distinction is it's key, I think. But also to mention that in your quest to acquiring relevant skills, be careful not to overskill. Just be mindful of what is relevant in your environment, and be focused on that. Lead baby steps. Take baby steps. There are a lot of learning opportunities online these days, so, which is good. But in addition to that's from a personal point of view. But speaking more broadly, I would also mention that I think it's important to invest in human resources, both at enterprise and individual level, to ensure that that staff have universal access to digital infrastructures, the tools and online learning techniques. It's also important to support both managers, officers, learners, and employers to continuously train and support online learning, particularly during this pandemic. And So whatever support that you need in that regard, it's important that we start thinking about that and how can we bridge this gap. And I think I'd mentioned that earlier, but another thing I would also like to add is the need to revise and improve our learning methodologies and materials here in this part of the world, so that we're able to adapt better to this situation. And personally speaking, I know that when I was in university, a lot of the cases that we used received common law, and so this was 1809, very old cases. These days, you have the lived experience. The reality is different, and so taking naturally in building current materials and learning methodologies, we have to take that into consideration as well. But also, just to quickly tie down the point that I had mentioned about this, I know it sounds like a broken record, just reiterating this issue of tailoring solutions. But another important thing to consider is to have a multimodal approach to learning and platforms. Just because we're no longer using traditional classroom methods does not mean that everybody has to use Zoom meetings. We can have multimodal platforms. I know in India, for example, they have learning programs or learning interventions across virtual training platforms, across radio, across different television. So if I don't have access to internet, chances are I might have access to regular television programs. So this sorts of opens the learning solutions to cater for high tech, low tech, and low tech models and situations, and providing inclusive solutions for everyone. And so that will be my immediate my comment on that. But just to quickly add to what Dino had mentioned about the policy response, what government should take into consideration, I would just like to add that it's also important for the issue of tax rebates. I know a lot of countries these days are taking that into consideration. So you can have tax rebates for employers who retain their staff, or retain their work-based training programs. What this means is it discourages the termination of employment or termination of these programs, and could positively impact on the ability of young people to continue to acquire skills through internships and apprenticeships and other kind of work-based programs. Because the statistics from the ILO global survey also shows that 45%, a whooping 45% of employers already indicated their interest in cutting, or rather their lack of interest in retaining work-based learning for young people. So if we have that kind of setting and create a fiscal space in terms of tax rebates, it's something that we can achieve. And also thinking about the impact that the long-term impact of cutting down on skills training or vocational and technical training for young people, it's definitely worth it to consider a solution like this, as well as, of course, social protection measures and contributions for young people as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ekpeme. Everything you've just mentioned are things that is really right now lacking in Nigeria, and I hope that by the time we present our reports to every one of the stakeholders that we work with, this is most of the policies that they will look at enshrining, because especially the safety net for young people, employers will still keep people within their books. It's very important that we offer tax rebates for them. And so, Rita, do you want to share your own story of one skill you picked up? You never knew, you just picked up this skill, and it's right now very helpful in the work that you do. You're on mute. You're on mute, Rita.
All right, sorry, Joshua, I would need you to like just. I'm not on mute again. Can you
Okay,
hear
so
me?
yes, I can hear you loud and clear. So I said, how can young people build skills that will help them to remain resilient at this time? And then do you have a story to share about a skill that you built over time and is helpful for the work that you are doing right now? Hello,
Oh,
Rita.
okay. So I have a couple of things written down here.
Okay. Please go on, Rita. We are listening.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, please, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, good. So for me, I would say first is enroll in say volunteering opportunities that you have around you, internship and fellowship. So those platforms help you build skills, right? That definitely useful on the long. The other thing is right now, I know we are having this back and forth on technology, but if you can and if you have access to say internet platforms, say Coursera, Acumen, Philanthropy, universities, to learn skills that are useful in building a social enterprise in the future of work, or even in what we currently have right now. Then I for one would tell people to just literally start from where you are, especially if you're going into entrepreneurship, because there's never going to be a perfect time. If it is not COVID-19, then it is Nigeria's economy, or it is one thing or the other. So start from where you are and check around you. There are resources, there are people doing whatever you want to do that you can learn from, using by volunteering, by running any sort of internship or apprenticeship program with them. So basically just start from where you are. Then a personal story for me, especially in this journey of building a business, is so in 20 we started in 2018 February, and by October November 2018, I got an opportunity to go to Lagos for Leap Africa. I hope you know Leap Africa. So they had this 1 year social entrepreneurship innovation program, and we had a 1 week onboarding. You won't going to Lagos for the 1 week literally crashed my startup then. So basically, I'd been running a business, a one-man business, and me being away for a week crashed the whole business. So using or leveraging on the fellowship, we had like a one week intensive learning period and all, and I literally had to build skills on how to develop a business, how to plan for succession and documentation and all of those. So throughout 20 for the first 3 months in 2019, we didn't operate anything. So it was more about me and a couple of my team members just learning everything we could learn on how to really develop a business enterprise, outside of a one-man business. Most of the startups that we have in Nigeria, most of the regular business, traditional business that we have in Nigeria, are one-man businesses that once the owner of the business is not available, then there's nothing that can be done. But we had to build skills from how to document properly, so we have like a process for everything that we do at EcoBata. We have a process map. So once you've done the same thing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, the next thing is whoever has been in charge is creating a process map, such that if a new person comes on board, all you have to do is pick up the documents and maybe with just a meeting, try run through, and you can repeat the process with minimal error. So that's one thing. The other thing that we do again is now, so we have like team meetings once a week, that so everybody in different departments know what the other person is doing, and as a team, we know how we're driving our impact. So those are like the things and the skills I had to build, how to develop a proper business, how to work with a team, how to structure a business. And also another important thing I had to learn was how to collaborate with organizations and even work with local governments. So, because that has been a tough thing. Waste management in Nigeria is, under the purview of the local government, right? So it's difficult to do any tangible work without working with the local government. So before then, it was difficult even getting them on board. But I had to learn how to approach the local government and just how to get people to understand what we do and support our work. So since then, it's been good news. We currently work with like Kuje Local Government Area Council, work with a couple of other organizations, and now, like I said, we have a more structured business such that even I being the founder do not have to be on ground. Like the past, have not been around for like the past 2 weeks, and we're doing fine. So that's it for me. Just you have to learn and learn from other people, learn from every other platform that you can learn from. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Rita. And we are at the home stretch right now, and I'll be inviting Dino to share how the skills that you've been able to build along the way that currently it's helping you in the work that you do. Because the reason why I'm actually asking us to share all of these stories is because oftentimes young people feel, I don't think I'll need this skill. But then with all of these stories, I hope that they'll be inspired to learn more skills that will be helpful for them. You know.
Thank you, and thanks again for bringing us together here. Since it's probably the last time I speak, let me really thank you again, and also for the colleagues you invited to be here. It's very, very interesting, and it's also always great to have the opportunity to listen to experts in their respective fields. And I think it's always super exciting to hear what's going on in Nigeria in particular. There's so much exciting developments and dynamics out there. So this is really always very, very insightful. So thank you for that opportunity. If I would have to choose one skill, let me maybe just refer to this report that was developed by the ILO last year on the future of work, where a commission basically for the year's time or so looked into what is actually out there, what are we expecting in terms of future labor markets. And I think what became clear is that it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's very hard these days to say, I want to learn this one thing and that will then help me to do something for the rest of my career. I'm not sure if I'm particularly good at that, but if I had to pick one skill, it would probably be adaptability. And if we listen to the stories that we just heard, even during this discussion, during this 1 hour and 15 minutes or so, I think there's a lot of adaptability already required in order to get there, right? And with the way things change these days, and that is even before COVID, the labor markets are changing very rapidly. And you also said the future of work is already with us. And I think it's very challenging today to make these decisions like a 30-year career. What do I need to know today in order to be relevant in 10, 15, 20 years? So I think the ability to adapt to changing requirements, the ability to continue to learn, to keep an open mind and try to confront challenges as they arise, even when we have finished our formal education and all that. I think that's a skill that is probably very critical. And if I would have to pick one, I think I would take it. I'm not sure if I'm particularly good at that, as I said earlier, but I think it would help me a lot going forward. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Dino. I want to really thank everyone who has been a part of this broadcast. Thank you, Ekpeme, Yewande, Rita, Dino, for joining us live on this very important day, talking about how young people can build skills that will help them to be resilient post COVID-19. And I'm sure that for everyone who has logged in on, that there's been one or two stories from this all of our panelists that has made you see that whatever skills that you try to pick up right now, one way or the other, it will be very important for the work that you are going to do. And then adaptability, something that Dino really said, is really, really key. So oftentimes I meet young people who say, so I read, I studied mathematics, so why do you want me to be someone who is working on your communications as an organization? It's very important because this is what employers will look out for. They will ask you what skills do you have, like how valuable can you be for this organization. If we are not talking about data science, is it that you will not be able to contribute? So please, I'm urging you that today that you stop blaming the government and then start and get to work. There are a lot of online tools that you can learn from. There's Coursera, there's Code Academy. There are so many free learning platform for you to be able to upgrade your skills. And then if you have questions, there are people you can meet up to, mentors who will be able to help you so that you can build your career better. So once again, thank you everyone for joining this broadcast. It's the World Youth Skills Day. As much as we talk about the problems, for us at the Nigerian Youth SDGs Network, we always try to talk about solutions, and then we bring examples to you, because the problems would always be there, but the solutions will act as an inspiration for you to understand that with whatever you have, you can start. Rita started 2 years ago, and we see where she is right now. Yewande started as a biochemist. Ekweme started as a lawyer, and then we can see where they are right now, working in, and then they are experts in their field. So wherever you are, whatever skill that you have the opportunity to pick up, all you just need to be able to do is that be diligent at it, be adaptable, be a team player, and I assure you that post COVID-19, we'll be getting congratulatory messages from you because you've gotten the job, you started your new business, or you are building your career better. So thank you everybody once again for joining our broadcast, and it's been wonderful being your moderator for this event. Thank you so much for making my job really easy.
Thank
Thank you,
you
Thank you
for
again.
Joshua.
having us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for having me.